Yeah. So I know I'm going to Northampton, New Hampshire. And that's also where my record company is. So I get to at least go visit them and see the studios because I've never been there before. So
Nice.
kind of kill two birds with one stone. And then I have Granby, which is not far from Hartford, Connecticut. I'm doing a collaborative composer vocalist workshop there for like a 12-hour thing. So yeah, beginning of the day, they have no idea what they're doing. End of 12 hours, there's gotta be a piece written, several pieces written. So yeah.
Okay.
So,
Sounds fun.
yeah, honestly, I mean, well, for me, it's a lot of fun. I love it a lot. But it's basically to teach composers, the different things to consider when writing for voice, because there's no formula to it, and it's about kind of the little minefields you have to be considerate about with a vocalist. That it's really important when you're writing pieces, because just because you write something for a soprano doesn't mean that every soprano is going to be able to perform that piece. And especially if you get commissioned for something, you don't want to you don't want to not communicate about whoever that singer is, like what their nuance is, what their tessitura is, and their passaggio is, and all those things. It's something to really consider that a lot of composers don't really they don't know to ask questions. So, and at the same time, it's going to it's a lot of good practice for singers to speak up, give input, learn what it's like to be collaborative with. Let's face it, a lot of singers don't get to really sit in the same room with a composer and work on a piece, like be actually in the process. So this is kind of a way to kind of like throw everyone to the wolves and see what happens. And so I know we've had some great.
Wait, okay, so was this your idea, or is this something that you regularly at the school, or?
I regularly do this around the country. So
that is brilliant. Good.
Yeah. And so I know it was one of those things, like I was trying to do something here in Chicago, especially during the summer. And really, there's just not a lot of go-getters yet in Chicago when it comes to new opera. So we're kind of working on that. But I put something on, like, I'm pretty sure it was something on Twitter, and I was like, I'm looking, if anyone's interested, I'm thinking of doing something like this during the summer. And then several people contacted me from East Coast and West Coast saying we should do something here. So I was like, okay, let's do it. So I'm going to be on the East Coast for 4 different cities doing those workshops, and then I head over to Portland for 3 days, and then Seattle for like a week. And I'm actually going to probably hang out with Shaya and probably Maggie from Second Inversion, some of the musical chat peeps. So I'm looking forward to that. It'll be nice to not have to teach children for a little bit and be an adult again, and be an adult and actually like talk and hang out with other adults and be creative with other adults. So yeah, I'm still looking forward to it.
Sure, I'm sure. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the blessings and cursings of teaching. For teaching a lot, you're definitely teaching children at some point. and like, it can be draining. I mean, teaching is draining to begin with, but I think children especially, because you're just giving so much input into that process. And
right, and each kid's different. I mean, I would say probably about a good quarter of my students are either autistic or have Asperger's too. And I can't tell you, like, in the past 10 years that I've been teaching, how much more patient of a person I've been forced to become when it comes to just dealing with not just quirks from the autistic kids, but dealing with just children's quirks altogether and their moods. And because let's face it, autistic or not, kids have mood swings. Like,
Yeah, mercurial is how I would
yeah,
put a little adjective in there because because they can be not in the mood. They can just be like, I don't know if I'm doing this today.
yeah. And some kids, that's all the time, which is even better.
They're like, okay, what are we doing? What are we doing today? You tell me.
Yeah. And so there are times I'm just kind of sitting back and going, okay, so what song are we playing? Oh, you didn't practice. Okay, well, guess what? You're going to practice right now, and I'm just going to sit here and
So you
dream
mostly
about
teach
my future.
piano, or do
What?
you also do theory and composition, or?
Yeah, it's piano and voice
Okay.
because my two main things really, and then I have some older students I do composition with and some music theory tutoring, but majority is younger kids, so a lot of it's piano and voice. But I like it. I mean, it's been great because like the last year and the year before, I actually had some kids land Ivy League in music, which is So I had a couple. I had last year I had 2 go to Juilliard, which was great, and then I had the year before that I had 1 Harvard and 1 Yale. So it's nice to to know that okay, well at least I have some kids that are making something of it,
Right.
You can't. I mean, as much as you would love to be like that guy that's like, I would love to instill them the passion of music. You can't force it on them. It's like it's either something they have or they don't. Like I never had any teachers. Of all the teachers I've had, I can't say any of them instilled it in me. That was something I already had and really just loved to do. So, at least I got through to some kids, which I mean that's the best you can ask for. Even if it's one, at least it's worth it. So
You're brave, because I always say that I don't want to instill anything in people. I want, if they have that within themselves and it's just like kind of that secret, I'm not telling anybody, then that's fine. But like to encourage somebody along this process is a lot of it's like, well, how much do I want to,
let me tell you, encouraging
experience.
Right. And honestly, and there have been times where I just said, you know what, I really just think we should quit because, there's some kids who just are completely foul no matter what you do. And it's like, I can be as sweet as pie for a year, 2 years, whatever. But, eventually it gets to a point where you're like, you know what, I've really just had enough. I can't do anything else. If you're not if you're not gonna meet me halfway,
right?
It's obvious that you're never gonna make anything of this. Well, you know what? It's fine. As much as we would love to say that it is, music is not every kid's thing. It's just not. That people aren't meant. Some people are meant to be artists. Sometimes you need those rigid, really calculated, technical thinkers who don't really, have maybe creativity isn't their strong suit. Okay, everyone has their role in life, I guess. So
I mean, kids are tricky because you never know if it's just like it just hasn't clicked yet, or if it's something where it's just not your bag. Like you just need to move on. But usually it's I don't know. All the kids that I run into, there's usually kind of intentional. Like they're either like purposely being like willfully not, participating, or they. I don't know. Some kids, they just have their own agenda, and kids are good at pushing their agenda. Like they're masters. They're masters. And so they can, have this whole facade of I don't care. And they're like, this means everything to me. Like internally, and you're like, okay, in order for me to help you get there, we're going to have to, you have to get there together. Yeah, I have some like deep conversations with like a 7-year-old because I'm like, listen, I know you want this, so we're not going to play games, okay?
Yeah, I mean, I had one kid that started this last September, who just chip on his shoulder from the very beginning, would like interrupt me with a bunch, like would just be like, okay, and I was like, no, let me explain, let me finish my sentence. I'm trying to teach you something, and after like about 4 weeks, I finally said, like, you know what? If you don't want to learn, I don't want to teach you. Like, I would rather just go home.
Right.
you know, and after saying this, he just went silent and he like flipped and literally kicked the piano bench back and like stormed off, like hysterically crying. And
Oh,
you know, the dad's like, "What happened?" And I said, "Honestly, he doesn't want to learn. He doesn't want to listen to me. I can't teach him. He won't let me.
right.
Because all he does is interrupt and play over me." And I'm like, so I said, unless he's willing to change his attitude by next week, I'm done. And,
Yeah.
you know, the kid was just like, he said he didn't want to teach me. And I was, but, you know, yeah, I don't want to teach you if you're going to act like that.
Yeah. I think it's kinder to let them know, because otherwise it's going to be a situation where it's like, listen, this isn't working out. We're not a fit, and we're going to have to move on. You know,
Right.
I mean, but at least you're giving them a chance to change what's going on.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I think that's really nice of you, honestly.
And honestly, it's not, I mean, obviously the money's great, but it's like, the money's not enough for me to sit here
Right.
and be bored and just babysit for a half hour. It's like, no,
Well,
like
if the money was that good, then we wouldn't be musicians.
right.
If that was the goal, if that was the only goal, like
Yeah.
if how much money you're going to give me at the end of the day, like then we wouldn't be musicians. We'd be something else. And you know, so yeah, your money's great, but there's other money. Yeah.
Like there's
There's other people.
there's always gonna be someone that wants lessons. Like
There's somebody who wants it desperately,
Yeah.
desperately.
Yeah.
And you're sitting here being a spoiled rat.
Yeah. And I'm lucky that I live in a community where it's pretty affluent, but you know, people are, you know, people, you know, it's always several kids in each household, and parents want people to come to their house and not have to go to a studio anymore. And so they have that luxury now where I can go to their house and teach them in their home, and then I get to leave. And at least this way I have the control of, if I'm going to be late, at least I can tell them I'm just going to be a few minutes late. Traffic sucks, you know, and, you know, they can't ditch me because then they've already paid for their lesson, you know?
Right.
So,
like you better be there.
yeah. And there's not a lot of communities that, you know, have that kind of setup, which is, you know, unfortunate, but at least I've been lucky enough that over the last several years, I've been able to build up that clientele where word of mouth has been the only way that my name has gone around. So it really is luck. That's for sure.
Well, I mean, and I think, you know, you say that, and then there's always a combination. You know, I mean, what do they say? You know, preparation met with opportunity, right? So like you probably, you know, that first client might have been pretty lucky, but like, you know, being good enough to get talked about, you know, being that person that people want to tell somebody about, that is a huge part of it as well, you know?
Well, I think the key too is just saying, like, you know, this is a business. This is what I do. I take it seriously. I don't take myself seriously by any means, because let me tell you, you saw the way I dance around with the kids sometimes. It's ridiculous. And I don't want anyone to ever videotape that. But, you know, it's right. No, everyone knows from the beginning, like everyone has to sign a contract. And the contract covers almost anything. It's such a legal binding document. And it's like, okay, like, if you screw me over, if you ditch me, you're paid for the lesson. And no, I will not make it up.
Right.
And if you do not schedule by a certain time, like by season, then you might be out. Even the parents have to be held accountable for the scheduling, and if anything changes. And it's like, you know, and I feel like sticking up for who I am, because I'm definitely not someone who's just gonna be like a yes man. I like, it's not going to happen. Like I have to make a living. And so I feel like a lot of my clientele really appreciate the fact that I would say, like, this isn't allowed to happen. Like, I know I'm going to your house and you're paying me, but at the same time I have rules too. And this is what I'll deal with. And this is what I absolutely will not deal with. And there's a lot of things that, you know, some people have asked about being exceptions to. And I've said, nope, no. You don't get an exception. You signed a policy, and this is what it is. Like, you know, too bad. So, So sad. You know?
Yeah,
But
that's awesome. I'm
yeah.
like the person that's like, well, okay, one time. It's not good, but like, it's one of those things where I feel like, okay, what if I make a mistake? Like, what if I just, oops,
Oh.
oops, you had a lesson, my bad. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I've told people that too, because one of the things I've taken off my plate is scheduling my students. I'm like, okay, here's my schedule. Put yourself in there. I'll tell you whether I'm coming or not. So if they schedule too late, I'll just be like, you know what? Like, you can't schedule that late. Like, if I don't see it, then you're out of gas. I'm not going to be there. Like, we won't do this. So you have to.
Oh yeah.
You have to like give me notice. That's why we have the 24-hour rule.
Right. And I'm like, I will not wait for you. If you are not home by the time I get there, I will not wait for you. Right back in the car, and I'm gonna go get lunch. And I will
have
see
to
you
do.
all
Like, this is my thing, okay, Ross? Like, you do a lot of music. I mean, a lot of music.
Yeah.
And not to be funny, but for your age and for this age, like, do you just write really fast, or do how does that process go for you?
I do. I mean, I guess considerably. I mean, I guess comparatively, I should say. I write fast. I mean, I've always been being in this state has been actually my best blessing. As annoying as it can get sometimes, it is something where it's usually like if I see text or a libretto or whatever it is, or just a story from a book I've read, and it's usually the emotions I feel first, and the colors I see, and then the music that I hear as a result of that. So for me, it's what I hear and I put on paper. And so I guess I'm not really sitting around and trying to figure out like things like chord layering and how am I going to edit this. Like, usually what I hear, I put down, and it's pretty rare that I go back and go, oh, I really need to rework that. So yeah, I think it is. I've also just had a very good reputation of just always meeting deadlines early. And when my mind's on something, it's not that I want to get it done, isn't get it done quickly and out of the way. I love accomplishing things. And I love finishing things, and but finish them with quality. And so there's a part of me that I just can't sit around and be like, well, I guess I got 2 weeks for this movement. Nuh-uh. I'm like, I need to get this done because it's in my head, and I want to see it. I want to see it, laid out in front of me as soon as I can, so that I can move on to the next thing. I'm also my mind is very busy a lot. Like, I mean, pretty much 24/7. It's very busy. Like, my sleep schedule stinks because something's always going, and it's always ideas, and it's always plots, and it's always instrumental combinations, or like having a vocalist send me a demo reel or like some YouTube videos of them saying that they would love to work together someday, and then like I hear a voice, and I'm just like, it would be awesome to work with someone like that, so it's always, I've got like this huge list of things I want to do. It's wanting to be able to get them accomplished. So I think considerably, I think I do write considerably fast, but I definitely have to be thoughtful in the process, and not just the moment I think like I just want to get this done. I know I need to take a break and force myself to be like, okay, like you should take a day or two off, because that's when I know that carelessness is going to happen. I don't want that to happen. So yeah.
So I just found out that you used to be a singer-songwriter, and I'm assuming that means like pop genre. Do you want to put a genre to that, or do you want to?
I've never been a specific genre. Like I I've released several albums, and my best selling album was actually a Celtic album because, um, I was raised in the UK and Ireland for a lot of much of my childhood, and I I Gaelic was my second language, Irish Gaelic, and so
Really?
yeah, and I was raised in the Sean-Nós tradition of singing, so very a cappella, ornamenting the melodic line, telling the story through the voice as an instrument, much more than being accompanied by another instrument or a group of instruments. So just relying on yourself and your voice and your heart and the story to tell, to entertain. So to convey however you're feeling. And so my best, yeah, my best selling album by far has been this Irish album that I did a while back, years ago. It was kind of like it had Gaelic lyrics, it had English lyrics, and I was being a little experimental with stuff like that too. And so, I mean, I've done the alt folk to Celtic to alternative rock kind of stuff, like soundtrack work too. And so, I mean, for me, it was, I always wanted to do different things, and so I wasn't gonna be like, well, I guess if I did a Celtic album, I should do another Celtic album and stick.
Right.
I was like, no, it was whatever. It was whatever I was feeling at the time, to do.
And so that's kind of my next question is like, when were you like, okay, this isn't what I'm doing anymore? Or was it just that next thing where you're just like, okay, well, obviously this isn't going to be the next venue because this is what I want to do.
I never quit, and
Yeah.
I know the door isn't shut. I never considered the door to be shut. It was just so almost 2 years ago, my mother passed away from pancreatic cancer, and it was she was actually diagnosed on July 2nd, 2014, and July 23rd she was gone. We had very, very, very little time, and my mother was my best friend, and she was the one person that, if anything, she said, you can do it. So and a lot of my life was full of people who said, you'll never do it. I didn't have a lot of good people in my life, and my mom was one of the probably only good people, and she was the best person. So it was hard to know that she was going to be leaving. And so I was thinking about doing another, like, at least quasi Celtic album, and I was thinking about lullabies. I had a lot of friends who were having kids at the time, and I know it was just something that just kind of spoke to me at the time. Like, I'm not going to be like extremely adventurous in this, but so when all this happened, my mother used to sing Shura Rún to me when I was a kid, and I did another podcast where I did like almost a half hour talking about this, so I'm going to make sure I don't spend that much time on it, but I'll try to be as short as I can. But I know, and her Gaelic was terrible, and she had no idea really what she was singing, and it was like I remember it was probably like halfway through, so like a week and a half into her being in the rehab center, just trying to get her as comfortable as possible. And I remember going to there's this children's bookstore in our neighborhood called Anderson's. I remember going there, and there was the book called I Love You Forever, which honestly, I think you can be the roughest, gruffest person, and you can read that, and you're just going to bawl your eyes out. And it starts with this little baby and the mom singing the lullaby, and then it goes through his whole life growing up, and how, like, even like when he's in his dorm room at college, his mom sneaks up to the trellis and cradles him and sings a lullaby, and then like it gets to the part where he's a very grown man and she's very old, and she's dying, and he takes her and he cradles her in his arms, and he sings the same lullaby to her. Yeah, honestly, I can't look at the book, and I lose it.
Right, like you're just like,
But,
"Whoa."
but I was like, that was my. I saw that book, and I was like, I'm gonna give her that send off. I'm gonna give her that "I love you forever" moment. And so I remember going into the studio and doing Shilarun, and I was like, well, I'm gonna do it kind of bitonal and do it very different than how a lot of people did it. And I was able to get that done. And I remember going to her rehab center, and she can barely talk. She wasn't even like really responding to anything,
Mhm.
and I just remember going to her, and I like the rough draft on my phone, and like brought my earbuds, and I was like, "Do you want to hear it?" And I really expecting her to say anything, and she just very softly said yes, and I was like, "Oh my God, she's still in there, thank God." And I put the earbuds in, and I just played it, and I saw tears, but there was like she couldn't say anything, and so I was like, okay, I got to say my goodbye to her. Like that was my goodbye gift to her. So I after that moment, I just felt nothing but uh, gratitude, really. So that I just it was just after that last album, so much happened where then like I really feel like she led me to the Great God Pan book, and which I read years before, and then I just decided to just dive back into composing because it was I've been an avant-garde performer, and I wrote all my own like monodramas and stuff before, and I was touring the world with it like in the much
Okay.
earlier 2000s, and something just like I just had this like evolution of performance where all of a sudden I was putting folk stuff and things, and then all of a sudden like you know a certain record company I won't say was interested in signing me for the more like alternative folk stuff, and I actually signed the contract, but then that company went under, and then I bought my album back, and I released that as my first album, which was
Oh,
this
cool.
Class.
Yeah.
And so it was like this evolution, and all of a sudden, before I know it, I'm like, okay, I'm off classical music altogether. I'm no longer doing it. Um, so I was touring, and I was making a good living out of it, and then come back 2 years ago, and I was like, I really need to write another opera. Like I feel like she gave me a sign. So um,
So let me back up a tiny bit because I'm not sure. Did you go to college and grad school, or did you?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I went to St. Xavier for my undergrad for opera performance, and it was okay. It was. I mean, it was a very traditional education, which I was just never a traditional child student by any means, and I really never felt fulfilled in my musical education or career until I got into grad school, which is at Illinois State. Sorry, there is a gnat in here. It's driving me crazy. Um, because I went from this really traditional undergrad. Like I love like one of the hugest fights I ever had in undergrad was my last year there, and I was like, I want to do 8 songs for Mad King by Peter Maxwell Davies, and my teachers thought I was insane. They fought me tooth and bone. I finally ended up writing my own song cycle. They didn't want me to do that either for my senior recital. Then, I got thrown to another teacher after having this other teacher I've had for like almost 4 years, and this other teacher immediately was like, "Yeah, you can do your own cycle." And I think I learned from the nights I spent on my own in the music lab, just kind of like listening to a lot more contemporary music and reading up on things and just buying CDs throughout my education there and self-discovery kind of stuff. And then going into grad school, I was like, you know what? I just don't want to sing anymore because like my passion was gone. My teachers just killed it. And I wanted to go into composition anyway. I did it a year into my program there. I went back to singing because everyone heard that I had been a singer, and then I got roped into doing all this stuff, and I was enjoying
Right. Having that ear, right?
it. Yeah. I
Like,
had,
let me use you.
yes.
Um,
So I had a good year of education of not being a singer, and then all of a sudden I was a singer again, but I also composed, and which at point. That at that time was rare too. There just weren't a lot of composers who sang.
Right.
So
Which is, it's just something like you know, which is what I love so much about the workshop you mentioned earlier, that you're doing the composer and singer workshop, because it's so, I mean, we're like, singers are so maligned. I think in the whole composer framework, like, first of all, they're like, you know, they don't even want to use voices half the time, because they're not real instrumentalists, they're not musicians, whatever. And then when you finally get somebody who wants to use a voice, like, they have no idea what it takes to make music with your mouth. Like, they don't understand.
well, yeah, and I mean, it is the most difficult, faceted instrument, but at the same time, it's definitely the most expressive of any instrument that we have. I mean, rivaling the cello maybe, but you know,
Mhm.
but that's the thing about, like, so comparison with the cello to the voice. It's, you know, you have different sonorities you can have on the cello. You have a very wide range, obviously, but then you have things like sul tasto and those really light, airy sounds, and your sul pontocellos, which are the much harsher metallic sounds. And then, you know, you have your ordinario, your standard bowing, which, you know, very warm, deep sound. But there's all these different kinds of sonic textures you can make out of a cello, and you could do the same thing in the voice. It's just, I feel like a lot of singers have been told that those things aren't allowed. You know, we get told bel canto is really the only thing you should be doing, and that everything else is so damaging. And it's not true at all. It is technique, and it's how you use your air, and it's trying to keep your voice as natural as possible, and not doing not manipulating, and trying to depend on relaxation and freedom of the mechanism. So, but there's so much else we can do. Like, our whole oral cavity itself can make sounds independent of our voice. So it was like, I don't know if you saw that video that I did from this last weekend on Twitter,
Yeah,
where I was doing the low
it's
multitonic.
really cool.
Yeah, and so that was a G below the low C, and it's, I mean, it's not just my chords just making it. It's depending on my chest register and a vocal fry in order
Right.
to happen. But that's the thing, is a lot, like, a lot of people demonize the whole vocal fry thing, which, yes, there's a way it can do damage, but if you know how to do that with a really good coach that shows you how to vocal fry and have your chords together without completely pressing them and rubbing against each other, there's so much already you can do with that. So, there are ways of having the voice do a lot more multifaceted things than what I think a lot of singers are even aware of doing.
Well, and I think it's, you know, we get that whole, you know, Western is right idea, and we stop exploring, you
Yeah.
know. Bel canto, and I feel like even the bel canto in and of itself has been bastardized, because the sound that is trumpeted as the sound for bel canto is not. It is like
Yeah.
a late romantic bastardization of bel canto. And so, you know, but you have that as like, so now somehow the central model, and
Yeah.
then, you know, trying to get back to an actual natural, to me, a true bel canto is a natural sound. um,
Yes.
and then realizing that just because it's not, maybe not the purest, the most unfiltered, you can still have gradations of that and still be healthy and still create good music, obviously. And that doesn't always come out as a classical sound.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I'm really interested actually in that, and how you develop those ideas, because that is somewhere I want to go. I'm not a composer, but I have had composer experiences. I am looking to get into and doing some, I call it meditation music, but not so much, because it's not going to be like kind of non just like woo-woo music. It's not going to just kind of
Right.
go out and just do stuff.
Right.
But it is going to
That
be
could
more.
do Enya.
Huh?
That could be Enya.
Yeah, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. I am, I'm still a dramatic mezzo by nature, so
Yeah.
obviously there's going to be some level of drama, but
Well, the thing,
it'll
the thing I
it'll be something I want to explore my voice with because I have
yeah.
a lot of different sounds. And, like you said, that those sounds can be demonized quickly, right? And saying that is not what's supposed to be happening. And I
Right.
kind of want to embrace that a little bit more than I have in the past.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely a lot of playing around. I mean, one of the things that really um, kind of helped me develop was in grad school, where I had one of my graduate assistant jobs in grad school was work like being a music lab, like a computer lab monitor for like the Finale and Sibelius computers. It was solely for the scoring, for people who wanted to score things. And I had my passcode to get in. No one else can get in unless they had a passcode, and only like 3 people in the whole department had the passcode, and I was one of them. And I mean, my professors gave me free reign of the campus if I wanted, and it was I would go sometimes at like 11 o'clock at night, and there'd be this janitor, this lady janitor she was so sweet. She would be like, she'd sit outside and she would smoke like for her during her breaks, and she was
Yeah.
always outside when I got there, and she knew who I was, and she was always like, "Are you gonna go work?" I'm like, "I'm gonna go up and work." And there were times that I would be at the computer and I'd be like engraving or just working on my score, and I would just get bored, and so I would just start singing in the room like no one was around, no one could hear me. Like a third floor, no one would know. And I no, I was just playing with stuff then. It was just strictly out of curiosity of what I was able to do. It was like singing while breathing inward. It was trying to use my chest register to make sounds, not just by sympathetic vibration, but actually using the cavity to make sound. Trying to use my head voice into making new sounds, and trying to do things with multiphonics and things with whistles while singing and things like that. And
Mhm.
I mean, the two things that really inspired me for that was like listening to like Diamond de Glace, especially, and then like Lisa Gerard. So because Diamond de Glace has a very harsh voice, and she's a very acquired taste, but she's
How do you spell that?
Diamanda is Diamanda. Glass is Galas, and she can be a lot to take. She's an aggressive voice, but she has a lot of amazingly just very poignant political things to say. And I remember one of her albums called Malediction and Prayer. She's a very dark soul, that's for sure. She's a very tortured person. Um, and I would listen to that in grad school, and I had fellow classmates just be like, "What the hell are you listening to?" I was like, "I just think she's the best." And then like I had people like Lisa Gerard, who still to this day does a lot of soundtracks. Like she did the Gladiator soundtrack, Whale Rider, like very much more pleasant voice, but she was someone who was able to make all these different ethnic um, ethnic colorings of her voice. Like she was Australian, she's white, she's Australian, but she was able to do a lot more like Indian sounds, a lot of African like vocalizations, to sometimes really sharp nasal things to very dark contralto sounds too. Like she covered Handel's Largo in her first solo album, and it was, I mean, does she sound like a really pure bel canto alto? No, but it's still a really interesting voice to listen to, and I
Mhm.
feel like people who like to play with the sonic landscape of their own vocal quality, um, I feel like they're always so amazing, like just really interesting. And so it was listening to things like that was like, okay, I'm just gonna start playing around with things and see what happens. And then,
Right.
and yes, there's times I just want to just sing a song and just you know not worry about just what weird things am I going to do. Um, but but now it's kind of cool because as someone who doesn't perform as often, being able to know what I'm doing, so that if I'm like, I'm writing a monodrama for Brooke Larimer right now, and I'm able to go to her and say like, okay, so if you don't understand what this notation means, this is what this is what you do. And honestly, if it's something that she can't do, then she can't do it. I mean, it's just how it is. It's how the voice is. And if it's not something you're prepared or attuned to do yet, that's fine. But it doesn't mean I'm not going to write it regardless. So,
Right.
there's always, and that's the beauty of working with live composers, is that you have options.
Right.
You have a score in
Well,
front of you, and all of a sudden you can't change anything. It's, and then a singer feels like inadequate then at that point. And that's not what we want to have singers do. We want to be able to say like, listen, like, okay, this is what I wrote, and let's talk about it. Like, go through it. Let me know what issues you have, and if it's something that we can change, then that's fine. I can always make two different types of the score for it, so that the original can stay, and then
right. And
the
then
other can stay.
your version,
Right.
your version will now exist.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think, again, the one thing that singers have in that community and in the classical art community is the ability to do the singing thing, because it's not easy, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, I feel like we can get really touchy when we approach something that we're not able to do, because
Right.
because that's kind of that is your bag, right? So you're like, this is my bag and you've pooped in it. No.
Right.
And so we can get really touchy. It's like, well, that's just not possible. And this is not something that is possible in the voyage. And
Well,
and I feel and it's one of those things where it's my personal process to realize, okay, just because I cannot do it does not necessarily mean that it doesn't need to be done.
yeah.
um, and and that's kind of my own personal process that I had to go through. And it is a maturing though, because especially when you're a young singer, you're just so touchy. You're just like, stop fucking me.
Yeah. I feel like ego is always part of the singer mentality, to a point. But yeah, we do get the point where we can say, okay, like, we need to chill out now. We are not the end all be all. We are always going to be flawed. We're always going to have things we're not going to be able to do. We're always going to have special things that we can do. And that's definitely something I always like. And by no means patronize other singers, but that's something I always try to communicate with singers is like, listen, chill out. Do not worry if there's something you can't do. Okay, there's always something. I always say there's always a trade-off. If there's something you can't do, I guarantee there's something you can do that another singer cannot do. And
Exactly.
it's about self-discovery. And I mean, even your traditional music education, like, vocalists don't get to explore that landscape. And I feel like it's okay to go to a singer and say, listen, you probably don't know everything about your voice unless you're one of those people that actually like sits in the room and really makes an effort for it. But let's face it, a lot of singers don't do that. So to be able to say to a singer, like, if you can't do this, how about we try something else? Like, or why don't you sit with this for a week and play with it and just see what you can do?
Right.
I have a basso profundo acquaintance. I won't say friend yet. I just met him, but he's going to be singing in my opera recording, where he has a low B flat below C, like, naturally. And
Yeah.
yeah, and I was like, I sent him the excerpt when he originally auditioned the opera, and I said, well, this, like, the lowest note you're going to hit is an E. I said, but if at the end of this excerpt you feel like you want to play around with it and hit much lower notes, like, take liberty. I don't mind at all. And like, I'm like, I actually like singers who like to take liberty with things, because sometimes there's other ideas that come across where I'm like, wow, that's great. And I can tailor that to whoever the singer is, and put a phrase in parentheses for an option if that's what they want to do. And if they don't, then they can just do like the half notes and whole notes, you know.
Right. That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think it's good to have that explorational possibility, but I do know that, you know, my singer senses freak out a little bit about it, and I don't know if it's just because of my personality or what, but I've also noticed a lot of singers have the same personality. That's like, it's pretty universal that we're all a little
Yeah.
like, let's just tell me how to do it. Do the thing.
Right.
It has to be clear, that you have to be clear.
Well, I feel like too, from very early on in our training, we get ingrained with this idea that we are such fragile instruments, and there's so many things we can do that's going to damage our chords. I mean, let's face it, who in college as a singer does not worry about getting nodes?
Right.
Like, so many singers panic about
that. Like, oh my God, I'm getting nodes. Yeah.
But then there's other things that they're not taught. Singers aren't taught. Like, your vocal cords do not have nerve endings. You cannot feel your vocal cords. You can feel everything else around them in your throat. So usually if something's hurting, it's most likely not your cords, it's something in your throat. Like, you are tensing up something, or you're rubbing something together that should not be rubbing together. Then that's not necessarily causing you vocal damage. It's definitely causing muscle tension, and it's going to cause some soreness, and eventually could cause muscle damage. But I don't think we're taught the full anatomy of what we're using. Like, we get the basics.
Unfortunately, a lot of people just don't even know. I mean, it's amazing to me, like, the lack of understanding of anatomy and physiology within the voice teacher arena. Like, I just don't understand how. It's gonna send me off on a tangent, but to me, it's the same reason why I have a problem with doctors. Like, how can you be in medicine and not be interested in a general understanding of how the body works, like general chemistry, like just chemistry? Like,
that's kind of insane.
It's like, if you can't just. I went to the doctor once because of a stomach problem, and they're like, well, what are you eating? And I told them I was eating, and I was like, well, and then I've taken some charcoal because I to not feel this anymore. And the kid was like, because she was in training. So the kid was like, why would you do that? Why would you? I'm just like, are you serious? Like, this is like basic. Like, why don't you know this? Like, why don't you know this? I don't understand. And I feel the same way about voice teachers sometimes. This is basic stuff. Like, this is your vocal cords, and these are normal phalanges, and this is this muscle. You don't need to know names. You just need to know how it works.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But they just don't bother. It drives me crazy. I'm sorry, soapbox.
No,
so.
I completely agree with you. I think it's something that has been lacking a lot in vocal education. And I mean, it's okay to say sing from your diaphragm, but do you actually know what you're doing when you're singing from your diaphragm? There's so many different levels of singing from your diaphragm. You see singers who are completely expanding around their diaphragm only, with no relaxation of their abdominal muscles whatsoever. Then you have people who completely will only breathe down into your abdominal muscles, and you see no expansion in the diaphragm either. There's so many different schools of support still, and everyone will say they teach the same thing. You're not teaching the same thing, because there are so many singers with different outcomes. And I really feel like I was lucky that as a singer, having anatomy and physiology as part of my program was something that was really important, because you had to understand what was going on. And unfortunately, there are a lot of programs that don't make that important. So,
Yeah.
Nats needs to kind of start, I think.
Well, and it's like, I don't know, Nats is, I don't know. I feel like they're trying to be inclusive, which is a good thing because, you know, there's a lot of religious demonization and vocal schools as well, in pedagogy, and that's not useful.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there should be like a basis of checkpoints, and anatomy and physiology should be one of them.
Yeah.
You know, this is how the body works. We should not be confused on how the body works. Like the body works like this. So just general understanding.
Yeah, right.
What we're using.
Yeah, trying to teach
Yeah.
the natural process
Right.
should be the important thing. I mean, there were years where everything was everything was back there because I was taught, oh yeah, that's opening up. No, that's not opening up.
Mm-hmm.
That's completely manipulating your sound and using muscle to manipulate that sound, and that is not what's supposed to be done. And you know, it took a while for me to kind of get back on track and be like, okay, so this is my sound, and this is my sound, instead of this is my soul. So, you know, trying to make that very clear can be very nerve-wracking sometimes. It can take a lot of effort to get a student to understand, like, don't darken that. Don't push everything back. Like, it's gotta be the mechanism. It's gotta be your natural sound. But I'm going off.
Yeah, I know we're totally on pedagogy world. Let's get back to one of my questions. So because we kind of covered it because you told me a little about Mrs. Jam on the Gloss, and but I want to know, how important is your input into, or your commentary on, societal issues, and when it is important and when it's not, and do you decide when you're going to allow that to color your work?
I do decide. I mean, sometimes it's necessary to just be stupid and go ahead, and I use that in the most silly way possible, and just do topics that you just think are going to be fun. I would say majority of my work, it definitely makes points, and it's not always going to be points that people agree with, and that's okay. And sometimes I leave those points open. I would rather just have people ask questions to themselves, and that's always a good thing too, is to at least try to get a dialogue started if necessary, you know, even if it's just the inner dialogue within a person who's gone and seen something, you know.
Or just starting a thought process. Some people it never crosses their mind, some of the problems that are existing, and those just misunderstanding of pure perspective. So to have that input is valuable, so valuable.
Yeah, I mean, so I would say a lot of my theatrical works are definitely much more about socio-political things, and equality, especially. That's really important to me. Like Great God Pan, it's all about religious dogma, gender equality, like some trans awareness, even, you know, things that I feel like are important questions that even nowadays. That story is from 1894, I think. And that story demonizes women so much, the original story. And so I was like, how do I turn this tale around a bit to ask those questions? Like, is this really how we treat women still? Have we progressed much? Have our sexual norms changed from that time? Have we been more progressive? Is there you know, a point to one religion demonizing another? What about misinformation? Like, we really we really misinformed things about paganism, especially in that time, about what that was about. And there are so many traditions that Catholicism itself takes from pagan tradition that we won't even acknowledge that. We completely deny that. Yeah,
It's like, what do you mean? I don't understand what you're saying.
right. But then, I have other works, like I have one called For Atticus, the Moonlight's Lover, that was like, it's very much a commentary on Putin's establishment of anti-LGBTQ laws, and about this girl who goes to who runs out to the forest every single night to meet the moonlight because she's in love with the moonlight. And of course, we try to do all this multi-layer meaning with it, but and then we have the monodrama I'm working on now. Is always, it's about the human psyche and development as far as using the woods as a metaphor, the forest as a metaphor, and the darkness and shadow. And, but we just finished one of my friends who's a librettist and I've worked with my opera called Lost Daughters, which is very much about the grieving process. She just finished the libretto that we were talking about, basing on the last Houdini seance of 1936. Am I going to be making a statement? No, I'm not. It's a pure vaudevillian comic opera, and I'm not trying to make a point. I'm just trying to tell a really fun story. I have aerial artists who also sing opera, and we have a really awesome ensemble called the Fourth Wall, who are just amazing, like hybrid artists, and their music. No, it's mainly flute and bass trombone and percussion, but they do all kinds of different instruments that they feel like doing. Like they do a lot of circus arts and things like that. And I just felt like it would be something really cool to just do something different and strange. And let's face it, comedy is something that I think we're missing very much in the opera world. And everyone has been saying, we need comedy, we need comedy. Like, I can't tell you how many singers have told me, please write a comedy.
Really?
Yeah. And that's kind of why I wrote The Passive Aggressive's Guide to Mother Goose, because that was kind of like my test, my jumping board to
No, I can't even tell you how much it really connects with me as a performer, because those aspects of musicality that drive the personality, and not even just within me, but within the piano scoring. It's like, I don't know if I've ever seen it just so much, where you really do drive the personality of what is happening by the notes themselves, and I'm like really enthralled with that.
Well, for me, the process was to make it staged in the first place, but not make it the singer with accompaniment. It's the piano is its own character too. The piano is kind of the commentary on going on with the singer and how the singer's relating her story. So it was very much, how do I make this a duet between the piano and the singer, and just how do I just make it really entertaining while kind of putting little tidbits of commentary in that too, about things nowadays that relate to what fairy tales we talk about in that cycle, like one of the best, like, honestly.
You were talking about the comedic thing, and I'll tell you, it's not just. And when I was looking for something to do this summer. I was like, well, I want something pretty light. I'm like, yes, being a musician can be so much work. Being an opera singer can be so much work. I mean, there's just so much work, and it can be so stifling in that you never get to do what you want to do. You never get to do what you want to do. You have to do what you have to do to have a career, and so I'm kind of over that. And so I was like, well, what do I want to do? It's like, well, I want to have fun. I gotta have fun. I want to like enjoy the concert. If I'm gonna do it, I want to enjoy it. I'm not gonna. It shouldn't just be work.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, of course, enjoyment includes, getting to explore my voice. Like I looked at a few, not a lot, but a few new music pieces when I was deciding, and I was like, well, this is interesting. Yeah, it fits my voice. Yeah, da, 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 those, certain things that you look at as a singer. And then I was like, you know what? This is not typical for me as far as even as a performer. Especially, I'm a dramatic mezzo, so I'm usually just either mean or like there's not a lot of in-betweens in my repertoire. So like just to go purely comedic was like, do I do this? Do I sing this fast? And let's see. But it fits so much because I understood musically, like I understood, why I'm doing this, and it clicked so fast. I didn't expect it to click as fast as it did. And now I'm just like really having fun with it. It's exciting for me. I'm really having fun.
It's definitely like one thing I love to do is definitely mess around with stereotypes within each vocal category. This is usually something you see for soprano, and it doesn't have to be for soprano. It just doesn't have to. Like our traditional stereotypes for voice types do not align with just people's regular personalities, and I feel like just felt like doing something really, just something that was so ridiculous and out of the ordinary was great. Oh, that's what I was gonna get back to. So like one of the best compliments I got from it was when it got debuted in Philadelphia. The composer Kayla Pearson was there because she lives in Philadelphia. I was really excited because I wanted to meet her for a long time, and we were both in New Music Gathering last year, and we never even got to meet up and chat. And so I remember her telling me like, "I'm going to be there, and let's chat afterwards." And but just someone like Kayla, who's had quite a successful run of her career, they would come up to me and be like, I remember mentioning before they premiered it, like I've never really written anything funny before, and I never thought of myself as funny because everything I've done has always been so deep and dark, because I tend to feel like that's more just how I run. And he was like, I would never have known that was the first time you did it. Like your comic timing is really
good. It's really good.
Yeah, and I was like, well, that's good. Like, I mean, that is honestly one of the best compliments I could have received, because I definitely was not the most confident in my my execution of that. For sure. So, I mean, I was gonna write regardless, and I'm one of those people like I don't care if you hate it. Hate it. Like
which is so awesome, because that's what makes you good at what you do. Honestly, it's because you do it unapologetically. You're like, so this is what I'm doing, and jump on the boat if you know what's going on. Like, and that's what is so amazing about a lot of what you do. And yeah, so kind of just throwing yourself into it, you definitely accomplished it. It's so easy to act out because it is so obvious. Like it's not, and I don't know if we just connect that way too. Like maybe I just have that sense of humor already, but it's so we connect on that level. But but yeah, it's just been so easy to say, oh, I'm so doing this here. I'm so doing, this is when I get my look, because I have a look,
and honestly, like what better personality to make fun of as easily as the passive aggressive personality? It's such an easy thing. And I mean, honestly, I think the only reason why it came across so well timed was just because I've known so many people who are totally passive aggressive, and trying to like, I mean, I avoid those people like the plague. sometimes there's people in your own family you can't escape from. They're just like that, and you're just kind of like, okay, whatever.
Well,
They also
I
give you
honestly
material to work on, you know?
was the social commentary for me.
Yeah.
Because to me, it's almost an American personality. It's almost like we were very blatantly aggressive, and then it became, that's not socially correct, that's not socially correct, that's not socially correct. So we built all this layering on social, correctness. And so people have like been, but they're still angry. They're still, and they're still like playing these games.
I feel like there's like, the hardest one for sure is movement 1, because I don't feel like, I would say movement 1 is much more a French variety of passive aggression, but because it's so just casually laid back, like you feel sorry for this man, but you should go help him out because I'm a little too busy right now. Like, oh, I really feel bad. I really feel bad, but no.
Like, don't you think you need to?
Yeah. And then it goes, but yeah, then it definitely goes to the much more, I would say, much more American version of what PA really is, which is the Miss Muffet is a hipster, because that is the whole vindictive, like, and randomness too. I would definitely say that, like, Maria Bamford, the comedian, was definitely much more of my inspiration for Little Miss Muffet, because she's so random in her deliveries of things, and I'm like, well, here's a spider. Oh yeah, by the way, and then breaking that fourth wall, like, yeah, why in the hell do you think there's a spider in my purse for situations like this? Of course I have one. Like, there's no logic to why you have one.
It's like for education.
Just because
I have a spider.
Yeah. So I feel like there's I feel like that sometimes the lack of reason is what makes that comedy happen. Like, yeah, there's no spider. There's no one carries a spider in their purse. But hey, this is the fairy tales. This is Mother Goose.
It's like,
we can do whatever we want.
Spider. That's all.
Yeah. and then our parental sense of PA, which is, like the very finale, which is, avoiding a really toxic person and then trying to like get kids out. Well, how do we do this? Well, we're just going to bribe them with chicken nuggets. Like, this is what we do. Like, we try to avoid conflict. So we're just going to do this, and then we're going to bribe whoever else to stay quiet too. Yeah. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of, I would always say there's a lot of like contemporary ways that we deal with things, like different facets of passive aggressive behavior that I want to touch in each movement. And some are absolutely ridiculous and some are quite subtle, but but it's very easy. It's very easy to play off of.
Yeah, it's really fun.
And just musically, just the turn of phrases is just like, it helps. It's something that I feel like just made it very easy for me to turn out. Like, the piano is much more of this person going, oh, here we go.
But I really didn't get until I did the rehearsal with Erina this last weekend, and I was like, oh my god, like, you are so annoying, like, and not in the usual way where you're just like, why are you here?
But that's the point. Like,
that way,
you're supposed to be an annoying character.
Responding to my words, I'm just like, listen, like, I'm doing something over here. And it's so funny that there's so much, like, obviously, like, why you did it, that she was literally commenting on what I was doing. I'm like, wait a minute. It's like, should you even, like, be allowed to talk? I don't know. Like,
are we really taking this? And and that was a great thing. That's something I always love too about just the whole piano vocal combination was just, I mean, I even thought about that in undergrad school. Like, it's such, I had a accompanist in undergrad school who was he's actually like the director of Lithuanian Symphony now, Rokas Tsubovas, and
Wow.
he was my piano accompanist for a while in grad school. And he was one of the only pianists I ever worked with where I really felt like we were working together instead of just someone following me. And
Mm.
ever since then, it was always like, I mean, and the piano is such a huge integral instrument with when it comes to like any traditional art song, especially. Like, it paints the mood. It like you can't, like, it doesn't. It is the duet partner, and sometimes we don't treat it like such. And I feel like that's something that makes a performance a lot more interesting and thick and complex. Is that the accompanist isn't just someone who's just playing notes to fill in negative space. It's
Right.
or thicken the texture or whatever, like, or to make things less boring. It's, you know, it's an ensemble. It's a cohesive team, and it needs to be treated as such. And so, yeah, I really feel like piano writing, especially, needs to be considered as well when it comes to composing things, like with art song. And whether it's piano or whether it's something that's like, I don't know, I've seen a lot of art song that's just accompanied by cello. It's the same thing. It's letting that other instrument be a part of that experience and not just an accompaniment instrument,
Hmm.
Like,
Where you're just kind of
yeah,
guitar chording it. Yeah.
yeah. So I feel like Dowland, I mean, a lot of people love Dowland, but I feel like Dowland did that a lot. I mean, Dowland took over as far as thematically, he took over negative space with melodic phrasing. But while a singer's going, there was no. It's just a compliment. It just, at least that's my opinion. It seems like it was just something that just filled in that space and kind of just held along with the singer. And so, which I've had a lot of Dowland conversations lately. So that's why it
Oh,
comes.
really?
Yeah. So I feel like, any instrument can do that as long as it's, you know, I think it's all in the writing. I think it's all in the execution of phrasing and when the timing's right for that instrument to kind of take the lead as far as its response. So yeah, it can be a complex relationship, but I think it's worth it in the long run if you really consider both from the very beginning and how that's going to come off to the audience.
Yeah. I mean, to have that final perspective is very valuable. It's very valuable.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm gonna go ahead and give me my last question.
Okay.
And it's actually I'm gonna combine it a little bit, because I'm interested in who you are as a composer, because a lot of composers I've met can be very hermit-like. It's kind of like the last bastion of I should be able to just be in my hole in the wall and like I don't have to talk to you if I don't want to. It's kind of I hope I'm not like
Yeah.
pushing any buttons out there, but it is. It's for every other musician or performer, we've kind of realized, okay, we're gonna have to connect at some point.
Yeah.
But as a composer, because it is such a private process, they're just like, listen, I'll just give you the music and you do the out thing. You do the out thing and then we'll do the in thing. But I want to combine that with the idea of, what is the difference as far as what do you want your audience to take away? What do you are, I'm sure that changes per piece, but what are you hoping to give to the audience?
Honestly, for me, what a lot more of my serious pieces, especially, like I said before, I really want my audience to ask themselves questions based on the content that's presented. And I guess for me, it's much more of, I mean, it's carried on from when I was a performer, was I give something to the audience. It's this whole give and take of energy. And you have this little bit of time to share yourself with a group of people who took the time to come and see you or see a work of yours. And I guess for me, it's just kind of reminding us about the fact that we're all human and we have this need to express and to receive. And so I really want an audience to be able to walk away knowing that they heard me and how and at least know that I've expressed myself the best possible way that I could have in a performance or presentation of a piece. And I think honestly it's just for me to just reach an audience and say, like, you're hearing me, but I hear you too. And I'm just trying to trying to give them something to relate to, and say, like, because there are people out there that you never know if your experience is going to reach them or not. And a lot of times you will reach someone with whatever performance that is, where they say, okay, I thought I was the only person that thought that, or I was the only person that has thought about a presentation like this, or I was the only person who thought about things that are being said in the text, or sung in the text, I should say. So, so for me, it's just having the trade-off with an audience, and yeah, it is different by every project, but sometimes I want the audience to walk away laughing. Sometimes I want them to walk away crying. Like, it's okay to want your audience to have a strong reaction. Otherwise, I don't think I'm doing my job. So I want them to react. And if that means that they say, I absolutely hate this piece, that's fine, because if their reaction is strong, I've reached out in some way to them where they have that reaction.
Right.
Like, if it's a strong enough reaction like that, I can actually live with that.
Yeah.
As far as, like, I'm trying to remember what the first part of the question was now.
Well, it was a comment, really. It was more a comment than a question, and I wanted your input on it. Was that typically composers tend to be solitary, and what makes you different? Or do you feel like you're more extroverted than most composers, or do you feel?
I definitely think I am. I'm sure there are composers that would hear me say it right now and be like, "Oh, please." But I know a lot of composers, and honestly, I know a lot of them are kind of socially awkward, and a lot of them, I feel like a lot of them don't like the fact that it is a lonely process, like, for sure. But, I think what has made it more rewarding for me, and what I always try to do for most pieces, is I have someone in mind and someone I talk to while I'm in that process of creating it. And so I don't necessarily feel like I'm alone when I'm creating, because like, even if it's bit by bit, I can take it and say, okay, what do you think of this? And, and let me know what you think. And some people, they have to be alone in that process, and that's okay, because they have to be in their head. And there's times I'm there by myself just going through something, but I don't feel like I really don't think like, oh God, I'm so alone, or I'm so lonely doing this, or I'm by myself.
I think, would you consider yourself more collaborative than others? Because those things, again, as instrumentalists, as musicians, because we tend to be introverted, we don't always make the connection. We don't understand there is a connection, much less like make the connection, right?
Yeah.
And so I think, a lot of us do it on accident, because it's just like the last ability to finally get some kind of anything across to another human being.
Yeah.
But
I definitely think I'm a lot more collaborative. I'm not going to say compared to other composers. I don't know. Like some might think they're really collaborative and might not be at all. Some might think they're not collaborative at all and might actually be collaborative and not know it. I mean, it's just speaking for myself. I think I'm quite a bit collaborative as far as majority of my work. Um, I love communication. I've worked with people in the past who are terrible at getting back to me about things, and it just drives me up the wall. Where I'm like, I need to know. There was one singer I worked with where I would just get I would get nothing back, as far as emails or Facebook messages or anything, and I was like, and then the result actually was a little bit disastrous. And I was like, why didn't you ever talk to me when I told you that you can let me know what's going on?
mm-hmm.
No, you know, so communication is really important. I'm definitely much more of an extrovert than a lot of composers I know. I really have no problem saying what's on my mind. And sometimes that annoys a lot of people. Not a lot of people, but a lot of other composers and people in new music. That tends to annoy some of them because I'm not brash as far as like as being harsh or say anything that would hurt people's feelings or anything. It just I do think I'm very confident in my ability to say what I'm thinking, and I feel like there's people that aren't, and that might bug them. I mean, you're always going to get that in the arts. No one's going to hate you no matter what you do, and some people are going to love you no matter what you do. And
Yeah.
and honestly, I'm not terribly worried about it. So, I mean, I communicate. I say what I want. I have a lot of singer friends here in Chicago that absolutely are very loyal to my work and love my work for the fact that I ask for their input in the creative process, and I tell them how much I appreciate them as much as I can. I tell them I appreciate them because honestly, without performers, what good is your work? So, I try to do thank you parties. I feed them during rehearsal if I can.
Aww.
It's just, and no, it's not something I have to do.
No, but it's important. It is important.
Well,
And
it
and
is.
and as a singer, you get looked over so much. You just we're like the last person that anybody actually cares about in the performance process. So
Yeah.
to give that, I appreciate you. Just that one phrase. Like that is really, I mean, God, I don't even know the last person that really as an authoritative figure, because as a composer, you hold that space, and director, that would say that, would even think to say that, you know what I'm saying? So it is extremely important.
Yeah, and I think that's something that definitely needs to change. And I feel like people, yeah, I feel like people in our field need to really, really, really wake up to the fact that singers are musicians and not just singers. Don't get me wrong, you do have singers that are just singers.
Yeah.
But
But you have the same thing across the board. It's just a matter of.
Yes, absolutely. So it's been able. It's no. I feel like singers singers have so much work to do, and that's the thing. It's as someone who's lived that life and now contributes to that life for others. It's the fact that people can treat singers like they're secondary citizens sometimes is just absolutely ridiculous to me because, I mean, what you give them is what they're going to put on their performance. And if you make them feel like they're not as important, they're not going to treat a performance as important. They're gonna give back what you give to them. And so it's very integral that you show them that like they need to think about every nuance and what they're saying and how they're going to convey a message to the audience, and having that conversation with them much more than saying, well, just learn it and we'll go over it later. No, like sit with a singer and talk about what I mean, as far as composers are, as far as how composers are concerned, like sit with your performers, talk about what you're trying to do, talk about your thoughts about it, and then get their feedback on it. Like it's a conversation and it's a give and take. And if that's when I feel like the best performances happen. And like that stupid Nat again, like that.
It's your best friend. Yeah, I mean, for any composers that end up looking at this, that it's a very important thing, because you don't realize, if you think that singers aren't musicians, you don't realize how much work goes into the process.
Oh, yeah.
And that they're not just ignoring, a lot of times people think you're just like, I think I will sing my own notes. I think I will just do this rhythm because it feels good to me. Like, no, it's not that, there's all those other things that become factors in how your brain and body process the music. And so if you're not communicating, why you've made those choices, the singer does not understand, and therefore it will not come out. And there's a lot of things that can come out of the voice that you don't want. So they're just trying not to help make those things come out. And so in that complicated process, it can get kind of convoluted. But if you do take the time to really help the singer understand what you want, they can do more of that. They can begin to actually physically process those ideas so that they can come out for you. So communication is essential in that.
Oh, without a doubt. And I definitely, that's why I really feel like, especially like where I live here in Chicago, it's really important to communicate with singers as far as, what their roles are in productions, and how they can broaden their role in a production, as far as, being able to speak up and add input into those things, where, I think we're so used to having a director that leads everything and just kind of pushes everyone in certain directions. And it's like, that's not really how it works. But a majority of these companies are what do that. They
train you that way. We always want to, it's like, listen, just think, especially as teachers. When you're a teacher, you kind of want to just be like, okay, listen, this is what has to happen. But the reality is that people are trained that way. You're trained that way, unfortunately, not just in music, but you're trained that way in school. You're trained that way in life. You just do what they tell you to do, and then you're like, okay, now get on stage and make up your own jump. Like, what? People are looking at me and you want me to think, and have an original thought. Now you want me to have an original thought? It's a big leap. That's
really sad and scary. That's what's expected. That you are expected to all of a sudden know what the hell you're doing after, particularly being in school, where they are telling you everything to do, and there's no transition, there's no connection into that, there's no trying to teach you how to be independent minded when it comes to roles. These singers are learning the hard way now, and it's taking them years in order to be able to do that and be more independent minded when it comes to, let me just read through the libretto and see what's going on, instead of this one-dimensional, like, I'm just going to learn the words and the notes and sing and hope for the best. And you get that nowadays still. But you can tell, it's very easy to tell which singers know what they're doing, are very comfortable in their skill and in their skin, and what singers still have a lot to learn. So
it's a lot to learn, because even just getting that, being able to learn the score down is a lot. And then there's all the other stuff.
It's a lot of stuff. Yeah.
And then there's this, there's the putting of it on, because we are losing those venues. We're losing the people that will just do the stuff for me. Like, can you just do the thing? And then I'll get out there and do the singing. And then there's not if if I'm waiting on somebody else to do the thing, I will never, it just wouldn't happen, you know?
Right. Yeah.
So there's just, there's a lot that goes into it. And thank you so much for giving me this time, because you get so much of that done. You get, you do not just the work, but you do the work around the work, and then you do the relationships, and you give a lot in that way too. And just to have people be able to see that process is is a is learning. So hopefully somebody will take the time to learn those things from your example, and I really appreciate it.
I hope so. I hope so. Thanks for letting me be able to talk about that stuff. That's really important.